Hi friends, and welcome. On today's adventure, we're headed west for the archery elk opener in Colorado. By we, I mean my best girl Tina, our pro staffer and friend Mike Butler and I, and together we're going to go out and see Pete and Judy and Paul, everybody out at Shelton Ranch Outfitters. Now if you're a frequent flyer, a regular viewer here on the Journal, you know we try to get out there for the opener every year, and I should tell you it's not because it's the best time to be there. In fact, it's probably the worst. Usually the elk haven't split up yet. It's still 80, 90 degrees in the afternoon sometimes. It certainly was this year. And that means you're trying to hunt 100 head of elk all at once. It's like hunting one elk with 100 eyes and ears and noses. Yeah, it's not conducive to hunting with a bow. But what it is very conducive to our travel schedule, and to tell the truth, I'd probably crawl in 100-degree heat all the way out to Maybell, Colorado for a chance to hunt elk. So this little extra challenge, well, I'm going. Hey, I'm your host, Kyle Randall. This is my Wilderness Journal, and we're out after an elk right now. We were up early that first morning glassing. We were checking the ridges, most of the fields, but so far we hadn't seen any elk.
Well, you can see forever. Almost thought I heard an elk bugle there. I think it was a cow.
We'll find one.
And then we did. A whole herd of them, in fact. We could see elk already halfway up the mountain. They were headed up Swan's Draw, and they were already up in the oak brush. There was no way we could get up there and get ahead of them before they went to bed. All we could do was sit there and watch, sort of put them to bed, and hopefully this evening we could get out in front of them when they came down. If they came down.
Yeah.
And if they came down in the daylight. That first morning, it looked like the entire herd was already well up Swan's Draw on its way to bed by the time we got eyes on them. The heat wave we were hunting in was obviously making a challenging hunt even more so, as if we needed that kind of validation. We were going to have to get more than a little lucky and get more than a little creative if we were even going to get close to an elk in this much heat. And that night, we did get close. Kind of. Right at dark. Right in the last few minutes of daylight. A whole herd was working its way down off the mountain and out through the Swan's Draw. But there was no way to get in front of them. Not before the end of legal shooting time. We just have to wait. Well, when the elk finally did come down, it was obviously much too late to even try to make a move to get in front of them. I will say, however, the heat was working in our favor at least a little. Pete told me they're gonna have to go to water. In this much heat, those elk are gonna have to drink sometime. And even though we could hear them out on the ranch bugling all night long, we thought perhaps if it stayed hot, we could get in front of some coming to get a drink. So the very next afternoon, Mike and Tina set up in a blind over some stock tanks in hopes that maybe a couple of elk could get in there for a drink before it got too late. And just before sunset, even in the 90-plus degree heat, the critters were coming. They were moving, they were coming to water. First a doe with 3 fawns worked their way in. And then they seemed a little nervous. Mike looked up on the hill and there was elk. First one cow elk, and then a bunch more were working their way down.
There's 1, 2, there's 5 more coming in from the far side.
It was literally beginning to rain elk down off of Red Mountain. They hadn't seen any shooter bulls out in the field yet, but there was a bachelor group of younger bulls feeding out in front of them. And then one of them broke off and started working in for a drink. This wasn't a legal bull to shoot, but it would be a good litmus test. This bull was walking right straight in. He closed to about 80 yards and then checked up, and then got nervous and ran back. Something was definitely bothering him. Fortunately, the rest of the elk didn't seem spooked, and Mike kept looking around, and then
Oh, right there. There's a nice bull.
a really nice 5x5 bull had worked his way up into the field. And after checking out some of the other elk that were piling up into that hayfield, Mike looked back and that big bull was coming. This appeared to be a really nice 5x5, definitely a shooter, and Mike had already seen enough. The bull stopped at about 75, 80 yards and then just stood there staring. And then ever so slowly he started circling to Mike's right. For some reason, he was a little nervous. He looked this way and that way, actually looked past the blind, but he wasn't running, he wasn't leaving, he was just nervous. And then he turned and left just like the spike had done. He didn't really seem all that spooked. He just walked back out to the cows like nothing ever happened. He'd come all that way only to stop and stare and turn around and walk right back out.
What happened there? Man, it was so close.
We're sitting quiet. We can't smell that bad at all.
Even if we had gasoline on our clothes or something, you know. Man. Something's got to be going on outside somewhere.
And in the end, the elk never really did spook. He just gathered up his herd and marched him back up into the field, and all Mike could do was sit there and watch him go. That, friends, is what frustration looks like. To go that far, to sit in that much heat, and to wait and then finally see your chance coming right at you, only to watch it evaporate like a mirage in the desert right before your eyes. That's tough to take. I will say, however, we figured out what was bothering the critters. Tina and Mike weren't the only ones hunting that water hole. In fact, there was a whole pack of coyotes hunting those deer that you saw, those fawns, and their presence was obviously enough to make all the critters out there nervous. For better or for worse, we'd just have to keep on trying in hopes we'd get one more chance. And speaking of another chance, I was sitting in a pop-up blind the next evening watching some deer working off the far hillside when I heard and then saw there was a small group of elk working their way out onto the hillside right out across from me. I sat there watching, listening. I could hear him calling and looking back. I hadn't seen a bull yet, but I could hear more elk up on the hill talking, so I decided to talk back, call them a little bit, see could I coax one out. And then it started raining elk down off that hill. I still hadn't seen a bull, but with this many cows and calves, there had to be one around somewhere. I could see over 25 head of elk working their way off that little hill, but I still hadn't seen a mature bull yet. I knew there just had to be one here somewhere. I sat and watched as they started working their way down. I thought, well, if they get down to the corner, jump the fence, and come over to water, they'll be right out in front of me. And when that bull does show up, they piled up at the fence the way elk oftentimes do, sitting there trying to decide were they going to jump or not. And then finally, somebody threw the jailbreak switch and they all started coming over. I coaxed them a little bit, and at least some of them were coming my way. They were hopping the fence and walking down toward the creek right out in front of me. I got ready. I still hadn't seen a bull yet, but if this group came in, there just had to be one. I still hadn't seen or heard a bull yet, but if this big a group came in, I knew there just had to be one somewhere. They worked their way down to get a drink. They were staying a little off to my right, but they were getting closer. I figured when the bull came down, I'd squeak at him a little bit, make him think one of his cows got over along the creek a little too far, and when he come to get her, and then, just as it was getting too dark, just when I was ready to give up, he showed up. A nice bull came walking up the creek. I don't know where he came from, but there he was. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything I could do about it. Shooting time was over. Close again. But as you saw, that bull didn't come down until it was almost dark. And with all those cows and calves running off the hill behind us and bunched up out in front of us, there was no way to make a move on them, even if we had the time. We were going to have to get a little bit lucky. We were running out of time. We needed something to break in our favor, or we were going home with empty pockets. That last afternoon in 90-plus degree heat, we hiked all the way up to the saddle stand, figured maybe we could get a little closer, only to find out the elk were already down by the fields. Now we needed to sneak back down, and we needed to do it fast. We had climbed all the way to the top in all of that heat to get closer to where we thought the elk could be, only to find them all the way down at the bottom along the field, bedded down right in front of the stand in some cases. Now we were going to have to figure out a way to get back down the mountain and get in close enough for a shot without getting caught. This was our last day. This was it. We were going to have to make it work. We crawled like bugs down off that mountain just as fast as we could go and got in as close as I thought we'd dare. I could already see elk up and working their way along the opposing hillside. They were headed for the field we were sitting on. There was no way we were going to make it to the stand. We'd just have to take our chances from here. There were elk all over that hillside, but I hadn't seen a bull yet. I knew there was one down there. I heard him squealing. I just kept looking, and then finally, there he was. A dandy bull was standing on the far hillside, and he wasn't alone. There were a couple of other nice bulls with him. And all of them were working their way down, headed toward the field. I kept watching on the hill, and the elk started looking down toward me. I looked, and there were a couple of spike bulls already out in the field beating up one of the bales of hay that was out there. So far, they were the only two on the field, but I could hear more cows and calves coming. And then one by one at first, and then more and more, dozens, what seemed like 100 elk were working their way up the field. The biggest problem we had was from where he was behind me, Mike couldn't see most of them. If I peeked out around the tree, I could see him. But he was having a really tough time getting on him with the camera, without getting caught, of course, which is kind of the point. We were sitting, watching, just being still. We heard another small bull squeal. Everything was going to plan. That is, except most of the elk were in the middle of the field, not over on our edge. There was no way for us to work in. Some of them would have to work over. And then a few cows started working their way up our side of the field. I was hopeful that as they got farther from the main group, one of the bulls would come over to round them up, and I'd finally get a shot. Three cows fed past us at less than 25 yards and somehow didn't manage to pick us out just sitting out there. We kept still, watching. And then finally, it appeared the bigger of the two bulls we could see was taking notice. He was starting to work his way down in our direction. A few more cows eased past us, and he was just standing out there eating like he really couldn't care less. And for that matter, it didn't seem to be a concern for the other bull that I could see either. All I could think was there were so many cows and calves, they really weren't focused on any one in particular, which of course wasn't helping us at all. And then one cow, I guess she had a prettier face than the rest, at least for an elk, started working her way down, and he started following her. Just a couple of more steps, and finally he'd give me my shot. And then I heard it. Mike whispering he couldn't see the bull that was brushing the way. And then to make matters worse, one of the other bulls was sinking down into the field, down toward his cows, and that's all it took.
See that 5x6 right there? He was right there, 35 yards.
The big boy turned and marched right back out into the middle of the field. The other bull just started feeding along, and then a spike bull came down the hill right past us. I mean, no more than 10 yards, and when he started working off into the field, for whatever reason, the whole group started going the other way. I had him. He had been right there, and then... And then it wasn't. It was over.
Would have been nice to make it to the stand. We got almost there and started hearing elk. They were bedded down around the stand. There had to have been 100 head of elk there between the two groups. That 1.6 point, he's a nice bull. He really is. The one that was bugling. I was going to shoot that 5x6. It was right here. He was right there, and you couldn't see him at all. I go to zoom in. Well, I'll tell you what, we did a pretty good job of staying in for 2.5 or 3 hours. That's a lot of elk, brother. Did you like that? It's exciting stuff, isn't it? Pete's gonna have to just throw a rope on me and drag me out with the truck. I could have shot that bull. He was there feeding for 5 minutes right there, right on the other side of the tractor pad. And he just wouldn't come this way. He was headed this way. And then another, could you hear that elk that came down right next to us? I mean, literally 10 feet away and walked through here. It was a spike bull, and when he walked out, his bull turned around to face him. And then they both walked out there by that old hay bale. That close. Oh.
My friends, that's the way it goes. Early season elk hunting can be really tough, especially that first week when it's really hot. We had gotten really close. I actually could have shot at one bull, but the camera couldn't see it. And we thought, well, he'll work his way out here, only he didn't. The truth is, it's always tough. And the last thing you want to do is spook that herd, because if you run them off, they could be gone for a week. And then your hunt's going to be over, so you have to be careful. You have to play chess a little bit and wait for that one chance that we generally get, and then you have to capitalize on it. And to tell you the truth, whether I get an elk or not, it's not so important to me. I love going to the Rockies. I love going out to the Sheltons, and I certainly want to thank them again, Pete and Judy and Paul, everybody out there. You always treat us so nice. I certainly want to thank Tina and Mike Butler for toughing it out and hunting with me. This wasn't the easiest trip in the world, but what it was a chance to go elk hunting. And if you're up for the challenge, pick up your stick and string and head up the mountain. Try to find you a big old bull or maybe a freezer filling cow. And either way, if you do, you might just run into me sneaking around up there trying to do it again next year, because I'm definitely going back as long as my legs will carry me. And hey, if I do see you on the mountain, well, you know we're going to stop and share a cup and a fire, maybe a few elk stories. And if I don't see you out there, friends, well, then I'll be waiting for you right back here so we can share another adventure from my wilderness journal.